Husband catches cheating wife and her lover in the act with a shocking gift that leaves them speechless. The moment was etched in his mind, a seemingly ordinary day that would soon spiral into chaos. As he sat at his desk, the soft hum of the office around him faded into the background. He had been anxiously awaiting the investigative report from John Michaels, a private investigator he had reluctantly hired after noticing subtle changes in his wife Linda Walker's behavior. The signs had been there. Her late nights at work, the unexplained phone calls, and the lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne on her clothes. Each clue had gnawed at him, but he had pushed those thoughts aside, convincing himself that he was being paranoid. However, the gnawing feeling in his gut had grown too strong to ignore, leading him to seek the truth. When the email notification pinged on his screen, his heart raced. He hesitated for a moment, staring at the subject line, "Investigation Report, Linda Walker." The weight of that moment pressed down on him, and he felt a mix of dread and anticipation. With trembling hands, he clicked open the document, and as he began to read, the world around him faded away. The words blurred together, but the meaning was painfully clear. Linda had been involved in a long-term affair with Grant Jacobs, a colleague from her office. The report detailed their clandestine meetings, the late-night rendezvous, and the intimate exchanges that had taken place behind his back. Each line felt like a dagger, piercing through the fabric of his reality. Disbelief washed over him like a cold wave. He read and reread the sentences, hoping that somehow he had misinterpreted the information. But the evidence was irrefutable. The emotional turmoil that followed was overwhelming. Anger surged through him, mingling with profound sadness and a sense of betrayal that he had never known before. How could Linda, the woman he had loved and trusted, betray him in such a devastating way? The thought of her with another man, sharing moments that were meant for them, felt like a betrayal of the deepest kind. He felt as if the ground had been pulled from beneath his feet, leaving him in a free fall of confusion and despair. John Michaels had been thorough in his investigation, providing photographs and timestamps that painted a vivid picture of Linda's double life. The images of her laughing with Grant, their hands intertwined, were seared into his memory. Each snapshot was a reminder of the love and trust he had placed in her, now shattered into a million pieces. He could hardly breathe as he processed the reality of the situation. The man he had considered a friend, Grant Jacobs, was now an enemy, a figure who had invaded the sanctity of his marriage. The betrayal felt like a cruel twist of fate, and he was left grappling with the enormity of it all. As the initial shock began to settle, a wave of questions flooded his mind. How long had this been going on? Was it just a physical affair, or had there been an emotional connection as well? The uncertainty gnawed at him, fueling his anger and pain. He felt a desperate need for answers, but he also feared what those answers might reveal. The thought of confronting Linda filled him with dread. How could he even begin to address the betrayal? Would she deny it, or would she confess to the truth he already knew? The emotional turmoil was relentless, a storm of feelings that left him feeling isolated and lost. In the days that followed, he found himself replaying memories of their life together, searching for signs he might have missed. He recalled moments of intimacy that now felt tainted, laughter that echoed hollowly in his mind. The trust that had once been the bedrock of their relationship was now a fragile illusion, shattered by the revelations of the report. He felt like a stranger in his own home, haunted by the knowledge of Linda's infidelity. The emotional weight was suffocating, and he struggled to maintain a facade of normalcy in front of friends and family. The confrontation with Linda loomed over him like a dark cloud. He knew he had to address the issue, but the thought of facing her filled him with a mix of dread and determination. He wanted answers, but he also feared the pain that would come with them. The emotional turmoil was compounded by the realization that their lives would never be the same again. The trust that had once defined their marriage was gone, replaced by a chasm of betrayal that seemed insurmountable. As he prepared for the inevitable confrontation, he found himself reflecting on the key figures involved in this painful saga. Linda Walker, his wife, had become a stranger in his eyes. The woman he had loved and built a life with was now the source of his deepest pain. Grant Jacobs, the man who had stolen her affections, was a figure of resentment and anger. And then there was John Michaels, the investigator who had uncovered the truth. While he had provided the evidence, he had also opened a Pandora's box of emotions that would be difficult to contain. The day of the confrontation arrived, and he felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. He had decided to confront Linda in their living room, a space that had once been filled with warmth and love, but now felt cold and unwelcoming. As she walked in, he could see the confusion on her face, unaware of the storm that was about to erupt. The moment he revealed the findings of the report, her expression shifted from confusion to shock, and then to a defensive posture that only fueled his anger. The emotional turmoil reached a boiling point as they exchanged words filled with hurt and betrayal. Each accusation felt like a blow, and the realization of what had been lost hung heavily in the air. In that moment, the reality of their situation became painfully clear. The trust that had once bound them together was irrevocably broken, and the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. The emotional fallout from this betrayal would shape their lives in ways they could not yet comprehend. As he stood there, grappling with the enormity of the situation, he knew that this was just the beginning of a long and painful journey toward healing and resolution. The themes of trust, betrayal, and the struggle for understanding would define their story, leaving scars that would take time to heal. In the wake of his wife Linda's increasingly suspicious behavior, the husband found himself at a crossroads, grappling with a whirlwind of emotions that ranged from confusion to deep-seated fear. The subtle signs had begun to accumulate, each one a small crack in the foundation of their marriage. Late nights at work, unexplained absences, and the sudden need for privacy had all raised red flags. Despite his attempts to rationalize her actions, the gnawing feeling in his gut told him that something was amiss. It was this internal conflict that ultimately led him to make the difficult decision to hire a private investigator, John Michaels, in search of clarity and truth. The decision was not made lightly. He wrestled with feelings of betrayal even before he had concrete evidence of Linda's infidelity. The thought of hiring someone to spy on his wife felt like a betrayal in itself, but the overwhelming need for answers pushed him forward. He needed to know if his suspicions were valid, or if he was merely succumbing to paranoia. The emotional turmoil was relentless, and the uncertainty was suffocating. He felt trapped in a cycle of doubt, and the only way to break free was to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. When he first met with John Michaels, he laid out his concerns, detailing the changes he had observed in Linda's behavior. John listened intently, taking notes and asking probing questions that forced the husband to confront his feelings head-on. The investigator assured him that he would conduct a thorough investigation, utilizing both surveillance techniques and background checks to gather evidence. The husband felt a mix of hope and dread. Hope that he would finally gain clarity, and dread at what that clarity might reveal. As the investigation unfolded, John Michaels began to compile a wealth of evidence that would soon turn the husband's world upside down. The investigator employed a range of techniques, including discreet surveillance, to monitor Linda's movements. The husband was both anxious and eager to receive updates, each notification a reminder of the precarious situation he found himself in. When John finally delivered the first batch of evidence, the husband felt a rush of emotions: anticipation, fear, and an overwhelming sense of dread. The evidence gathered was both damning and heartbreaking. John presented a series of photographs that captured Linda in intimate moments with Grant Jacobs, her colleague. The images showed them laughing together at a cafe, their body language suggesting a level of comfort and familiarity that was deeply unsettling. There were also photos of them leaving a hotel together, their expressions carefree and oblivious to the pain they were inflicting on someone else. Each photograph felt like a punch to the gut, a stark reminder of the betrayal that had been unfolding right under his nose. But the most shocking evidence came in the form of video footage. John had managed to capture Linda and Grant during one of their clandestine meetings, their interactions revealing a level of intimacy that left the husband reeling. Watching the footage was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. He couldn't look away, yet every second felt like a dagger to his heart. The laughter they shared, the way they leaned into each other, and the tender gestures were all reminders of the love he thought he had with Linda. The stark contrast between the life they had built together and the reality of her betrayal was almost too much to bear. As he processed the evidence, the husband felt an overwhelming need for clarity. The truth was no longer just a desire. It had become a necessity. He needed to understand the extent of Linda's actions, to grasp the reality of their situation. The emotional turmoil that had been brewing inside him transformed into a desperate quest for answers. He found himself replaying the footage in his mind, searching for signs he might have missed, moments that could have hinted at the betrayal. The need for clarity consumed him, driving him to confront the painful reality of his marriage. However, the implications of the investigation began to take a toll on his mental state. The emotional burden of knowing that his wife had been unfaithful weighed heavily on him, leading to sleepless nights and a constant state of anxiety. He felt as though he was living in a fog, unable to focus on anything other than the betrayal that had shattered his world. The images and videos haunted him, replaying in his mind like a broken record. Each time he closed his eyes, he was confronted with the reality of Linda's infidelity, and the pain felt as fresh as the moment he first discovered the truth. The investigation also created a rift in his sense of self. He had always prided himself on being a loving and devoted husband, and now he found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about his marriage. The feelings of inadequacy began to creep in, leading him to wonder if he had somehow failed Linda. Had he not been enough for her? The emotional turmoil morphed into a toxic cycle of self-blame and anger, leaving him feeling isolated and lost. He struggled to reconcile the man he had been with the man he was becoming, a man consumed by betrayal and heartache. As the investigation continued, the husband found himself oscillating between moments of clarity and overwhelming despair. The evidence provided by John Michaels had stripped away the illusions he had held onto, forcing him to confront the reality of his situation. He felt a sense of urgency to confront Linda, to demand answers and seek closure. Yet, the thought of facing her filled him with dread. How could he confront the woman he had loved so deeply, the woman who had shattered his trust? The emotional turmoil was relentless, and he felt as though he was standing on the precipice of a decision that would change everything. In the days that followed, he became increasingly aware of the toll the investigation was taking on his mental health. The constant barrage of evidence, coupled with the emotional weight of betrayal, left him feeling drained and vulnerable. He found himself withdrawing from friends and family, unable to share the pain he was experiencing. The isolation only deepened his despair, and he felt as though he was trapped in a nightmare from which he could not awaken. Despite the darkness that surrounded him, there was a flicker of determination that began to emerge. The need for clarity and truth had ignited a fire within him, pushing him to confront the reality of his situation head-on. He realized that he could no longer live in the shadows of doubt and betrayal. The investigation had provided him with the evidence he needed, but it was up to him to decide how to move forward. The emotional turmoil would not disappear overnight, but he understood that facing the truth was the first step toward healing. As he prepared for the inevitable confrontation with Linda, he felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. The evidence gathered by John Michaels had laid bare the reality of their situation, and he knew that he could no longer hide from the truth. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was determined to reclaim his sense of self and find a path toward healing. The implications of the investigation had been profound, but they had also sparked a newfound strength within him, a strength that would guide him through the tumultuous waters of betrayal and heartbreak. The day of the confrontation had arrived, and the husband felt a storm brewing inside him as he prepared to face Linda. The air in their home was thick with tension, a palpable reminder of the betrayal that had shattered their lives. He had spent countless hours rehearsing what he would say, but now that the moment was here, words seemed to escape him. As he stood in the living room, he could hear the faint sound of Linda moving about in the kitchen, oblivious to the emotional tempest that was about to unfold. When Linda finally entered the room, her expression shifted from casual indifference to confusion as she sensed the gravity of the situation. The husband took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation. "We need to talk," he said, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of pain. Linda's brow furrowed, and she opened her mouth to respond, but he cut her off. "I know about the affair, Linda. I have proof." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and he watched as her face drained of color. The initial shock on Linda's face quickly morphed into a defensive posture. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. "You're being ridiculous." But the husband was no longer willing to entertain her denials. He pulled out the photographs and video footage that John Michaels had provided, laying them on the coffee table between them. Each image was a stark reminder of the betrayal, and he could see the realization dawning on Linda's face as she took in the evidence. The tension in the room escalated as Linda's defenses crumbled. "How could you do this to me?" she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "You had me followed? You invaded my privacy?" The husband felt a surge of anger at her response. How could she turn this around on him? "I didn't want to believe it, Linda. I wanted to trust you, but you left me no choice." His voice rose, filled with the raw emotion that had been building inside him since the moment he discovered the truth. As they exchanged heated words, the husband felt a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, anger, sadness, and confusion. Each accusation felt like a knife, cutting deeper into the wounds of their fractured relationship. He had loved her, had built a life with her, and now he was faced with the reality that she had chosen to share her love with another man. The anger surged within him, fueled by the memories of their life together, now tainted by her infidelity. "How long has this been going on?" he demanded, his voice trembling with emotion. Was it just a fling, or was there something more? Linda's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, he thought she might finally show some remorse. "It was a mistake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to happen." But her words only fueled his anger further. "A mistake? You've been lying to me for months. You've betrayed our family." The emotional weight of the situation felt unbearable, and he struggled to contain the rage that threatened to consume him. As the confrontation continued, the impact of Linda's affair began to seep into the conversation. The husband couldn't help but think about their children, who were blissfully unaware of the turmoil that was unfolding in their home. "What about the kids, Linda?" he asked, his voice cracking. "What are we going to tell them? How do we explain this?" The thought of their children suffering because of Linda's choices filled him with a sense of despair. He had always envisioned a stable, loving family, and now that dream felt like it was slipping through his fingers. Linda's expression shifted as she realized the gravity of the situation. "I never wanted to hurt them," she said, her voice breaking. "I was just lost. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore." The husband felt a mix of anger and sadness at her admission. "So you thought cheating was the answer? You thought lying to me would solve our problems?" The emotional aftermath of the affair was beginning to take shape, and he could see the cracks forming in their family dynamics. As the confrontation reached its peak, the husband felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The emotional toll of the betrayal was overwhelming, and he could see the toll it was taking on Linda as well. The tears streaming down her face were a stark reminder of the pain they were both experiencing. But even in that moment of vulnerability, he couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that lingered in the air. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "You've shattered my trust, and I don't know how we can move forward." The silence that followed was deafening. They stood there, two people who had once shared a deep love, now facing the reality of their fractured relationship. The emotional aftermath of the confrontation was palpable, and the husband felt a sense of loss that was almost suffocating. He had hoped for clarity, for answers, but instead, he was left with more questions than ever. The impact of Linda's affair would ripple through their family, and he knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. In the days that followed, the emotional fallout from the confrontation began to take shape. The husband found himself grappling with feelings of anger and betrayal, but also a profound sense of sadness. He had loved Linda, and the thought of losing her felt like a death in the family. The emotional turmoil was relentless, and he struggled to find a way to cope with the pain. He began to withdraw from friends and family, unable to share the depth of his hurt. The isolation only deepened his despair, and he felt as though he was navigating a dark tunnel with no end in sight. The impact of the affair on their children was another layer of complexity that weighed heavily on his mind. He couldn't bear the thought of them being caught in the crossfire of their parents' turmoil. The husband found himself constantly on edge, worrying about how to protect them from the fallout. He and Linda had always prioritized their children's happiness, and now he felt as though he was failing them. The family dynamics had shifted dramatically, and he knew that they would have to navigate this new reality together, even if it felt impossible. As the husband and Linda attempted to communicate in the aftermath of the confrontation, the conversations were fraught with tension. They both struggled to find common ground, and the emotional wounds were still too raw for meaningful dialogue. The husband felt a mix of anger and sadness every time they spoke, and he could see that Linda was grappling with her own feelings of guilt and regret. The emotional aftermath of the affair had created a chasm between them, and he wondered if they would ever be able to bridge that gap. In the weeks that followed, the husband began to seek support from friends and family, sharing the painful truth of his situation. The emotional burden felt lighter when he could express his feelings, but the pain of betrayal still lingered. He realized that healing would take time, and that the road ahead would be filled with challenges. The impact of Linda's affair would not only affect their relationship, but would also shape the lives of their children in ways they could not yet comprehend. As he navigated the emotional aftermath of the confrontation, the husband found himself reflecting on the lessons learned from this painful experience. Trust, once taken for granted, had become a fragile concept, and he understood that rebuilding it would require effort from both him and Linda. The journey toward healing would be long and arduous, but he was determined to find a way forward, not just for himself, but for the sake of their family. The confrontation had been a turning point, a moment that forced them to confront the reality of their situation, and he hoped that, in time, they could find a way to rebuild what had been lost. In the aftermath of the devastating confrontation with Linda, the husband found himself grappling not only with the emotional fallout of her betrayal, but also with the daunting reality of navigating the legal landscape of divorce. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, but he understood that he needed to take decisive action to protect himself and their children. It was during this tumultuous time that he sought the assistance of Lisa Hawkins, a seasoned divorce attorney known for her expertise in family law and her compassionate approach to clients in crisis. Lisa was a formidable presence, exuding confidence and professionalism as she guided the husband through the complexities of the divorce process. During their initial consultation, she listened intently as he recounted the events that had led him to this point. Her demeanor was calm and reassuring, providing him with a sense of stability amidst the chaos of his emotions. "You're not alone in this," she said, her voice steady. "We'll work together to ensure that your rights are protected and that you achieve the best possible outcome for you and your children." As they delved deeper into the specifics of the case, the husband outlined his goals for custody and financial settlements. He was determined to secure primary custody of their children, understanding that their well-being was paramount. The thought of Linda's affair and the instability it had introduced into their lives weighed heavily on him. He wanted to create a stable environment for their children, one that would shield them from the emotional turmoil that had engulfed their family. Lisa assured him that, given the circumstances, he had a strong case for custody, especially considering the potential impact of Linda's actions on their children. In addition to custody, the husband was also focused on achieving a fair financial settlement. He had always been the primary breadwinner, and he wanted to ensure that both he and Linda would be able to maintain a reasonable standard of living post-divorce. Lisa explained the various factors that would be considered in determining financial settlements, including the length of their marriage, each party's income, and the needs of the children. The husband felt a sense of relief knowing that Lisa was well-versed in these matters and would advocate fiercely on his behalf. As they began to outline the legal steps necessary for the divorce, the husband couldn't help but think about the implications of Linda's affair on Grant Jacobs, the man who had played a significant role in the breakdown of their marriage. While he was primarily focused on his own family's well-being, he understood that Grant's actions could have legal ramifications as well. Lisa explained that, depending on the jurisdiction, there could be grounds for a claim of alienation of affection against Grant, especially if it could be proven that he had knowingly interfered in their marriage. The thought of pursuing legal action against Grant was both tempting and daunting. The husband felt a mix of anger and frustration toward the man who had betrayed him. Additionally, the husband was concerned about the potential impact of the divorce on Linda's sister, Natalie. He had always had a cordial relationship with Natalie, but he knew that the fallout from the affair would likely affect their family dynamics. Lisa advised him to remain focused on his own case and to avoid involving Natalie in the legal proceedings unless absolutely necessary. "It's important to keep the focus on your children and what's best for them," she said. "The less drama, the better." The husband appreciated her guidance, understanding that the emotional toll of the divorce would be significant enough without dragging extended family into the fray. As the legal process unfolded, the husband found himself navigating a series of steps that felt both overwhelming and empowering. Lisa helped him file the necessary paperwork to initiate the divorce proceedings, ensuring that all legal requirements were met. They discussed the importance of documenting everything related to the case, from financial records to communication with Linda. The husband felt a sense of purpose as he gathered the information needed to build a strong case for custody and financial support. Throughout this process, the husband also began to consider the emotional implications of the divorce on his children. He wanted to approach the situation with sensitivity, understanding that they would be affected by the changes in their family dynamic. Lisa emphasized the importance of maintaining open lines of communication with the children, encouraging him to reassure them that both parents would continue to love and support them, regardless of the circumstances. The husband took this advice to heart, recognizing that his children's emotional well-being was just as important as the legal outcomes. As the divorce proceedings progressed, the husband found himself attending mediation sessions with Linda, facilitated by Lisa. These sessions were tense and emotionally charged, as they navigated the complexities of custody arrangements and financial settlements. The husband felt a mix of anger and sadness during these discussions, especially when Linda attempted to downplay the impact of her actions on their family. He struggled to maintain his composure, reminding himself that the goal was to secure a stable future for their children. During one particularly heated mediation session, Linda expressed her desire for joint custody, arguing that she should have equal time with the children. The husband felt a surge of protectiveness as he listened to her. "You've put our family through so much turmoil," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I can't trust that you'll prioritize their well-being after everything that's happened." Lisa interjected, reminding Linda of the importance of stability for the children. The tension in the room was palpable, but the husband felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that he had a strong advocate in Lisa. As the legal proceedings continued, the husband also began to reflect on the broader implications of the divorce. He understood that the emotional fallout would extend beyond just him and Linda. It would affect their children, their extended families, and even their friends. The thought of navigating these changes felt daunting, but he was determined to approach the situation with grace and integrity. He wanted to model resilience for his children, showing them that even in the face of adversity, it was possible to move forward and rebuild. In the weeks that followed, the husband and Lisa worked diligently to prepare for court hearings, gathering evidence and building a compelling case for custody and financial support. The husband felt a renewed sense of purpose as he focused on the future, determined to create a stable and loving environment for his children. He knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but with Lisa's guidance and support, he felt equipped to face whatever obstacles lay ahead. As the divorce proceedings reached a critical juncture, the husband found himself reflecting on the lessons learned throughout this tumultuous journey. He had discovered the importance of seeking help and support during difficult times, and he had gained a deeper understanding of the legal system and its implications. More importantly, he had come to realize that while the pain of betrayal would always be a part of his story, it did not have to define him or his family's future. With each passing day, the husband grew more resolute in his commitment to his children and their well-being. He understood that the divorce was not just an end, but also a new beginning, a chance to rebuild, to heal, and to create a brighter future for himself and his family. As he prepared for the next steps in the legal process, he felt a sense of hope emerging from the ashes of betrayal, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was always the possibility of light. As the calendar turned to the week of Sophie's birthday, the husband felt a mix of anticipation and dread. This was supposed to be a joyful occasion, a celebration of his daughter's life and the happiness she brought to their family. However, the shadow of Linda's infidelity loomed large, casting a pall over what should have been a day filled with laughter and love. Despite the emotional turmoil swirling within him, he was determined to create a joyful atmosphere for Sophie and her friends, knowing that her happiness was paramount. In the days leading up to the party, the husband threw himself into planning. He meticulously organized every detail, from the colorful decorations to the cake that Sophie had requested, a rainbow unicorn cake, complete with vibrant frosting and edible glitter. He spent hours at the local party supply store, selecting balloons, streamers, and party favors, all while trying to suppress the nagging thoughts about Linda's absence. He wanted to ensure that Sophie felt celebrated and cherished, even if the circumstances were far from ideal. On the day of the party, the house was transformed into a whimsical wonderland. Balloons floated cheerfully from the ceiling, and a banner reading, "Happy Birthday, Sophie," hung proudly over the dining table. The husband had set up a craft station in the backyard, complete with paints, markers, and glitter, where the children could unleash their creativity. He even arranged for a small petting zoo to come, knowing how much Sophie loved animals. As the doorbell rang and the first guests arrived, he felt a flicker of hope that the day could still be special. However, as the party unfolded, the emotional strain of Linda's absence became increasingly palpable. The husband found himself navigating a complex web of feelings: anger, sadness, and a deep sense of loss. He watched as the children laughed and played, their joy infectious, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Linda had always been an integral part of their family celebrations, and her absence felt like a gaping hole in the festivities. He forced himself to smile and engage with the children, but inside, he was wrestling with the reality of their fractured family. As the party progressed, the husband noticed that Sophie and her friends were having a wonderful time. They giggled as they painted their faces with bright colors and chased after the animals in the petting zoo. Yet, amidst the laughter, he could see moments of confusion and disappointment flickering across Sophie's face. She would glance toward the door, as if expecting her mother to walk in at any moment, and each time she did, the husband felt a pang of guilt. He knew that Linda's absence was weighing heavily on their daughter, and it broke his heart to see her searching for a presence that was no longer there. When it came time for the cake cutting, the husband gathered the children around the table, trying to rally their spirits. "Okay, everyone, it's time to sing Happy Birthday to Sophie," he announced, his voice bright and cheerful. The children erupted into song, their voices ringing out in unison. But as he watched Sophie blow out the candles, he couldn't help but feel a sense of melancholy. He wished that Linda could be there to share in the moment, to celebrate their daughter's special day. The thought of her enjoying the festivities with Grant Jacobs only deepened his sense of betrayal and anger. After the cake was served, the husband took a moment to step outside for some fresh air. He leaned against the porch railing, trying to collect his thoughts. The sun was shining, and the sounds of laughter floated through the air, but he felt a heaviness in his chest. He had worked so hard to create a joyful atmosphere for the children, yet the emotional strain of Linda's absence was suffocating. He couldn't escape the reality that their family was fractured, and the pain of that realization was almost too much to bear. As he stood there, lost in thought, he heard the sound of footsteps approaching. It was Sophie, her face smeared with frosting, and a look of concern etched across her features. "Daddy, where's Mommy?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. The question pierced through him like a knife, and he felt a wave of sadness wash over him. He knelt down to her level, forcing a smile despite the turmoil inside. "Mommy had some things to take care of today, sweetheart," he said gently. "But she loves you very much, and she's thinking about you." Sophie's brow furrowed, and he could see the wheels turning in her mind. "But she always comes to my birthday party," she said, her voice tinged with confusion. The husband's heart ached at her words. He wanted to shield her from the harsh realities of their situation, but he also knew that he couldn't lie to her. "I know, honey. This is a little different, but we're going to have a great time together, okay?" He hoped that his reassurance would ease her worries, but he could see the disappointment lingering in her eyes. As the party continued, the husband made a concerted effort to engage with the children, playing games and encouraging them to enjoy the festivities. He watched as they ran around, their laughter filling the air, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The absence of Linda was a constant reminder of the turmoil that had engulfed their family, and he felt a sense of guilt for trying to create a joyful atmosphere while grappling with his own pain. Throughout the day, he noticed that Sophie would occasionally retreat to a quiet corner, her expression contemplative. He knew that she was processing the absence of her mother, and it broke his heart to see her struggling. He wanted to be the strong, supportive father she needed, but the emotional weight of the situation was overwhelming. He felt like he was walking a tightrope, trying to balance his own feelings of anger and betrayal with the need to provide comfort and stability for his children. As the party began to wind down, the husband gathered the children for one last activity, a piñata filled with candy and small toys. He hoped that the excitement of the piñata would distract them from the emotional undercurrents of the day. As the children took turns swinging at the colorful figure, their laughter rang out, and for a moment, he felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, despite the turmoil, they could still create joyful memories together. When the piñata finally broke open, candy spilled onto the ground, and the children rushed to collect their treasures. The husband watched as Sophie's face lit up with delight, and he felt a surge of pride. In that moment, he realized that while the absence of Linda was painful, he had the power to create happiness for his children. He could be the source of joy and stability they needed, even amidst the chaos. As the last guests began to leave, the husband felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. He had managed to create a joyful atmosphere for Sophie, but the emotional strain of the day weighed heavily on him. He knew that the road ahead would be challenging, and that the impact of Linda's absence would continue to reverberate through their family. But as he tucked Sophie into bed that night, he made a silent promise to himself. He would do everything in his power to support her and their children, to be the father they needed, and to navigate the difficult journey ahead with love and resilience. As he kissed Sophie goodnight, he felt a renewed sense of determination. The turmoil of the past few months had been overwhelming, but he was committed to creating a stable and loving environment for his children. He understood that while the pain of betrayal would always be a part of their story, it did not have to define their future. With each passing day, he would strive to be the father they deserved, to fill their lives with joy, and to help them navigate the complexities of their new reality. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was ready to face them head-on, for the sake of his children and their happiness. The aftermath of Linda's affair rippled through the lives of everyone involved, leaving a trail of emotional devastation that would take time to heal. For Linda, the consequences of her actions were immediate and profound. The guilt and shame that had been festering inside her began to manifest in ways she could no longer ignore. As the reality of her choices settled in, she found herself spiraling into an emotional breakdown. The weight of her betrayal, coupled with the fallout from the divorce, became too much for her to bear. Linda's emotional state deteriorated rapidly. She struggled to cope with the consequences of her actions, feeling isolated and overwhelmed by the pain she had caused her family. The guilt gnawed at her, and she found herself withdrawing from friends and family, unable to face the judgment she feared. The once vibrant woman who had been the center of their family gatherings now felt like a shadow of her former self. Her days were filled with anxiety and despair, and she often found herself crying uncontrollably, haunted by the memories of what she had lost. Eventually, Linda's emotional turmoil reached a breaking point. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, she collapsed in her living room, consumed by feelings of hopelessness. It was then that her sister, Natalie, intervened, recognizing the severity of Linda's condition. Concerned for her well-being, Natalie insisted that Linda seek professional help. Reluctantly, Linda agreed, and she was admitted to a mental health facility for evaluation and treatment. The hospitalization marked a turning point for her, as she began to confront the emotional wreckage left in the wake of her choices. During her time in the facility, Linda underwent therapy that forced her to confront the underlying issues that had contributed to her infidelity. She began to explore her feelings of inadequacy, the pressures of motherhood, and the disconnect she had felt in her marriage. The process was painful, but it was also cathartic. For the first time, Linda began to understand the impact of her actions, not just on herself, but on her husband and children. The therapy sessions provided her with tools to cope with her emotions and to begin the long journey toward healing. Meanwhile, the husband was also navigating the tumultuous waters of recovery, albeit in a different way. The emotional fallout from Linda's affair had left him reeling, but he was determined to find a path toward healing and moving on. With the support of his attorney, Lisa Hawkins, and the encouragement of friends and family, he began to focus on rebuilding his life. He understood that while the pain of betrayal would always be a part of his story, it did not have to define him. The husband immersed himself in activities that brought him joy and fulfillment. He took up running, using the physical exertion as a way to clear his mind and process his emotions. Each mile he ran became a metaphor for his journey. One step at a time, he was moving forward, leaving behind the weight of his past. He also made a concerted effort to spend quality time with his children, creating new memories that would help them heal as a family. He organized weekend outings, game nights, and movie marathons, all aimed at fostering a sense of normalcy and joy in their lives. As the months passed, the husband began to notice a shift within himself. The anger and resentment that had initially consumed him started to dissipate, replaced by a sense of acceptance. He realized that holding on to bitterness would only hinder his ability to move forward. Instead, he chose to focus on the lessons learned from the experience. He had gained a deeper understanding of himself, his values, and what he wanted in a future relationship. This newfound clarity became a source of strength as he navigated the complexities of life post-divorce. It was during this period of self-discovery that he met Nikki, a woman who would play a significant role in his journey toward healing. They crossed paths at a local community event, where they both volunteered to help with a charity fundraiser. Nikki was warm, genuine, and had a contagious enthusiasm for life that drew him in. As they worked side by side, he found himself laughing and enjoying her company in a way he hadn't thought possible after the heartbreak he had endured. Their connection blossomed organically, built on shared values and mutual respect. Nikki was understanding of his past, but she also encouraged him to embrace the present and look toward the future. She had her own experiences with heartbreak, which allowed them to bond over their shared journeys of healing. The husband appreciated her ability to listen without judgment, and he found solace in their conversations. With Nikki, he felt a sense of safety that had been absent in his previous relationship. As their relationship deepened, the husband began to recognize the growth he had experienced since the divorce. He was no longer the man defined by betrayal. He was someone who had emerged from the ashes, stronger and more resilient. Nikki encouraged him to pursue his passions, and together they explored new activities, from hiking to cooking classes. Each shared experience reinforced the idea that life could be joyful again, and he felt a renewed sense of hope for the future. However, the journey was not without its challenges. The husband was still navigating the complexities of co-parenting with Linda, who was slowly working on her own recovery. He understood that while he had moved forward, Linda was still grappling with the consequences of her actions. There were moments when he felt anger resurface, particularly when he thought about the pain she had caused their children. But he also recognized that healing was a process, and he had to allow space for Linda to grow and change. As Linda continued her therapy, she began to take steps toward rebuilding her relationship with their children. She reached out to them, expressing her love and remorse for the pain she had caused. The husband watched as Sophie and their son, Jake, navigated their feelings toward their mother. It was a delicate balance, as they grappled with their emotions while also wanting to maintain a connection with her. The husband encouraged them to express their feelings openly, reminding them that it was okay to feel hurt and confused. Over time, Linda's efforts to reconnect with the children began to bear fruit. She attended family therapy sessions, where they could all express their feelings in a safe environment. The husband was cautiously optimistic, recognizing that healing would take time, but he was willing to support their journey. He understood that the emotional consequences of the affair would linger, but he also believed in the power of forgiveness and growth. As the seasons changed, the husband found himself in a place of acceptance. He had learned to let go of the anger that had once consumed him, and he was ready to embrace the future with Nikki by his side. Their relationship had blossomed into something beautiful, built on trust and mutual understanding. He felt grateful for the lessons learned through the pain, recognizing that they had shaped him into a better partner and father. In the end, The consequences of Linda's affair had far-reaching effects on all parties involved. For Linda, it had been a wake-up call, forcing her to confront her demons and seek help. For the husband, it had been a journey of self-discovery and healing, leading him to a new relationship that showcased his growth. And for their children, it had been a challenging but ultimately transformative experience as they learned to navigate their emotions and rebuild their family dynamics. As the husband looked toward the future, he felt a sense of hope and possibility. He had emerged from the darkness of betrayal, ready to embrace the light of new beginnings. With Nikki by his side and a renewed sense of purpose, he was determined to create a life filled with love, joy, and resilience. A life that honored the lessons learned from the past while looking forward to the promise of tomorrow. As we reflect on the husband's tumultuous journey through betrayal and recovery, several key takeaways emerge that resonate deeply with anyone who has experienced the complexities of love, trust, and healing. This story serves as a poignant reminder of the fragility of relationships and the vital role that trust and communication play in maintaining a healthy partnership. The husband's experience underscores the importance of being attuned to the dynamics within a relationship, recognizing that even subtle changes can signal deeper issues that need to be addressed. One of the most significant lessons learned throughout this journey is that trust is the cornerstone of any relationship. Once broken, it can take considerable time and effort to rebuild. The husband's initial discovery of Linda's infidelity shattered the trust they had built over years, leading to a cascade of emotional turmoil that affected not only their marriage but also their children. This experience highlights the necessity of open and honest communication between partners. When issues arise, addressing them head-on rather than allowing them to fester can prevent misunderstandings and resentment from taking root. The husband's journey illustrates that vulnerability and transparency are essential components of a strong relationship, fostering an environment where both partners feel safe to express their feelings and concerns. Moreover, the husband's story encourages viewers to reflect on their own relationships. Are there signs of disconnection or dissatisfaction that have gone unaddressed? It's crucial to be vigilant and aware of the emotional landscape within a partnership. Sometimes, the signs of betrayal can be subtle: changes in behavior, increased secrecy, or a lack of intimacy. By recognizing these indicators early on, individuals can take proactive steps to address potential issues before they escalate into something more damaging. The husband's experience serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us that ignoring red flags can lead to devastating consequences. As the husband navigated the aftermath of betrayal, he also learned the importance of self-care and personal growth. His journey toward healing involved not only addressing the pain caused by Linda's actions, but also rediscovering his own identity and passions. Engaging in activities that brought him joy, such as running and spending quality time with his children, allowed him to reclaim a sense of purpose and fulfillment. This aspect of his journey emphasizes that recovery is not solely about mending a broken relationship. It's also about nurturing oneself and finding strength in adversity. Viewers are encouraged to prioritize their own well-being, recognizing that healing is a multifaceted process that requires both introspection and action. The husband's eventual relationship with Nikki further illustrates the potential for growth and renewal after betrayal. Through his experiences, he learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and the qualities he desired in a partner. Nikki's presence in his life became a source of support and encouragement, allowing him to embrace the future with hope and optimism. This new relationship exemplifies that while the scars of past betrayals may remain, they do not have to dictate one's future. Instead, they can serve as a foundation for building healthier, more fulfilling connections. As we conclude this exploration of the husband's journey, it's essential to invite viewers to engage with the content on a deeper level. If you found value in this story and the lessons it imparts, consider subscribing to our channel for more insightful discussions on relationships, healing, and personal growth. By liking and sharing this video, you can help spread awareness about the importance of trust and communication in relationships, encouraging others to reflect on their own experiences and learn from them. In a world where relationships can be both beautiful and complex, it's vital to foster an environment of understanding and support. By sharing stories like the husband's, we can create a community that values open dialogue and encourages individuals to seek help when needed. Remember, you are not alone in your struggles. and there is always hope for healing and renewal. As you navigate your own relationships, take the time to reflect on the lessons learned from this journey. Consider how you can cultivate trust and communication with your partner, and be vigilant for any signs of disconnection that may arise. Embrace the opportunity for growth, both individually and as a couple, and remember that healing is a journey worth taking. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of betrayal and recovery. We hope that the husband's story has resonated with you and provided valuable insights into the complexities of relationships. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video to continue the conversation and support others on their journeys toward healing and understanding. Together, we can foster a community that values love, trust, and the power of connection.